topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Okay, yeah, so you got me. I have an issue with backs, right? So I'm going through my backpack once again, and I'm realizing how many compartments there are and how many things that I didn't know were in there. And it's been actually classic in this moment, right before I'm having this this podcast and this pause moment with you all, and really an opportunity to kind of unpack some of our bags. But as I was going through, and this is a bag that I found because I have my traditional backpack, which is starting to rip and tear. You know, I got like the weight of it, and everybody talks about, oh, you know, Daria, it's too heavy for you. It's too heavy for you. And they're probably right, given my MS. You know, you're not supposed to push things too much and all that good stuff. But for whatever reason, I find a way to what? Push stuff. So at the end of the day, I find this backpack as I turn to my left, knowing that my other backpack's on my right. Okay. And I'm realizing I got stuff in every corner of this that I don't even think I've used before or knew how to use it. I think this is for a camera, you know? So it's just kind of crazy stuff. But all in all, wonderful to kind of be back with you guys in a live moment. We haven't had an opportunity, honestly, in the past almost month. It's been crazy for both me and Arthi. We've been trying to juggle life, the end of the school year for our kids, being there like a mama should, but then additionally, the responsibilities that we've also taken on in our lives as well, and the relationships that we have. And so the juggle sometimes gets rough to have a opportunity at the same time every week. So we definitely appreciate you guys dealing with the pre-records that we've had, and hopefully you've gotten to catch up on some of the podcasts that you missed, because I think some were, you know, pretty heartfelt for me, definitely, but additionally, I think in reference to the amount of information and some of the people that we've spoken to, there's pretty good podcast. Pretty good information there for anybody. So, kind of bringing us to today, though, you know, we were talking about this whole thing called a backpack and our emotional backpack, and really how this emotional backpack that we carry around on a daily kind of takes effect on us. You know what I mean? And how it can make our body alignment kind of off. But additionally, how we kind of feel stiff and not able to, you know, have the same range of motion, like they say, as usual. And so the thing about it is I've been trying to work through all of my different emotional backpack. And really trying to make sure that I'm looking inside different areas in my life, and the whys and the why nots, or the, hey, listen, it is what it is, you know, or additionally, maybe it isn't what it isn't. And so, all in all, it's been kind of cool to be able to kind of pull the different things out of my backpack, you know, but it's definitely been a slow journey. Like it's been an over the time thing, and it's been kind of surprising because a lot of the things that now I'm going out to get myself certified on, or additionally educate myself more, just have a more in-depth intellectual moment to do some personal discovery. um it's been kind of crazy seeing how things have affected me. I've realized that in this backpack I have, you know yeah, some pebbles, you know what I mean, these little things that I've just dropped in there, you know what I mean. And then there's the different rocks that we have in our life, you know what I mean, these like big things that kind of make, if inside the body, uncomfortable, right? So we got these things up in there. And then there's a lot of us that don't realize how many things come into our backpack that are literally okay, like boulders. Okay. And the thing about that was, I don't know who thought of that image, but I hope you got it because my heart is still beating a little fast from picking it up. But all in all, we got some big boulders up in our backpack too, and how many are we either, you know, putting into the backpack, leaving them there, or how many are we taking out and actually dissecting, like really where it all came from? You know what I mean? Or why it came from, or why are we still carrying it in our backpack? And can we get it out of our backpack? So, um, I think it's been amazing to be able to find out really what my backpack holds. And when the pause platform talks about the wisdom in our wounds, we're talking about the things that are in our backpack that we've actually taken out, dissected, figured out what the deal is, and hopefully, like, turned some of that pain into passion, right? Additionally, this tragedy and trauma into some type of transformation for you. And so that is like the main mission of the pause platform. And so, as I've been able to dissect in the different areas within my own life, and then additionally, I've been, blessed with being able to assist people, you know, at some of the hardest times of their life when they lose their loved one, right? And able to actually look and see, okay, what are those different things that they're picking up or have picked up or are dealing with from the past that are coming forward in this moment. And so I've been really exploring this word called grief, right? And like every one of those little like pebbles or rocks or I'm not doing it, boulders, right? That's there. At the end of the day, how are you looking at them? Is this a form of grief that's in your life, right? So, of course, figuring out, well, what is grief? And so you might have known, I have gone out and actually Arthi too have gone out and got certified in grief education. And then additionally, now we've even journeyed into becoming grief recovery specialists. And so in this journey, now we've really been able to dissect what grief is. Okay. And I feel like, in reference to, unfortunately, society thus far, we have not had or been fully equipped to deal with the different types of grief that come into our life, right? So I first want to give you this definition, right? Because the thing about it is, if you hear the definition, you say to yourself, well, God, there's a lot of things in my life that I could put into that category, grief, right? Now, listen, grief is not everybody that has trauma has, grief has trauma, excuse me. But people that are dealing with trauma are in a category of the grieving state, but with some different twists to the picture. So, understanding the distinction between grief and trauma, and what you're dealing with. But if we look at grief, right, we talk about grief and its definition. It's actually the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or the change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Well, golly, there's a lot of things that fall in that ballpark, right? I mean, if I think about it, there's, obviously the loss of a loved one and then your daily, obviously you're living together, or even if you're far away, sometimes that phone call that doesn't come, you know, there's the loss of somebody that obviously could be one of them heavy boulders in the backpack, right? But at the same time, the pebbles and the stones that we place in there, what are those things within our life, you know? And now the size of the stone, don't get me wrong, doesn't make it more um, uh, uh, that each one of these other things don't affect you literally, somewhat the same, because grief is what grief is, right? But at the same time, we're talking about some of these things have a little bit more meat and intensity and hold on our lives. And so those would be those big bouldery guys, right? But at the same time, even when we're talking about the pebble, what things could you say would be things within your life that could be looked at as, a loss? And you'd be surprised. Something as simple as moving, like moving from one apartment to another, not the circumstances of the why, but just moving from one to place to another, or starting a new school, marriage. That's a total different change, right? When we're talking about patterns, and additionally, how you might even start behaving, there's a change there, right? Graduating from high school, even college, but high school, there's this time in your life. I watch my daughter now, and she comes home, it's junior year, and she's emotional and she's crying. And it's just one of those things where they're recognizing the change in their life and how it's coming upon them. Aliana, being as little as she is, 8 years old, last day of school yesterday. I call to find out how it was. Dad's driving home. I say, babe, how was your day? And tears, I guess, start coming down, and I hear her say emotional. And I'm like, who am I talking to? Right. But at the same time, I'm glad that she knew to connect it to being an emotional, and that this endly change will bring it. Okay, um, holes and stones and even the sand that we can drop in our bag that affects our day to day, you know? And so I sometimes even think about how there's kind of sometimes a double effect when we're talking about a loss of a loved one, and then the holidays come, and how that is kind of like this, the person's not there, but then the holiday also feels a little bit different too, right? And so over time, figuring out, ways to start integrating this grief, is somewhat of a mission of mine to be able to help people do that. And honestly, it's like every life coach, we're like two steps ahead, right? Two steps ahead of anybody we're helping out. And sometimes we're still in the moment, knowing what's right and still trying to figure out how to get there too. But, if I can help somebody forward in that moment. But, empty nest, another loss, that comes into play and that we don't recognize. The changes in jobs, your health conditions, changes in your health condition. You get a diagnosis, and then there's what dropped in your bag, and then how is it going to affect how you move on a day to day? Remember the backpack that I carry around? Well, could I get places a little bit quicker? Could I maneuver a little bit better if I were able to have this backpack a little bit lighter, You know what I mean? And so as the years have gone on, I've even recognized how I have not just one bag, I got two bags. But I got a bag for this, and I got a bag for that, and I got a bag for this, right? Wait, hold on. Where's your pocketbook, right? I get it, right? We got a lot of bags that we continue to carry on. And so we try to figure out, well, what are those things, right, that we might fall in the loss category in tandem with the other things that can come into play. Like, hey, Harthi, how are you? We were just talking about losses and like basically the different types of losses. And in doing so, I was talking about the stones, the rocks, and then I'm not doing it again, right? But I tried to pick up this boulder that I found outside. Mm-mm, that almost knocked me out for the day. So all in all, the boulders, right, that we put in our backpack. And so really trying to figure out like what we're putting in there, but what we were starting off with like what is grief, what is loss, and what type of things are we really talking about here? Because, sometimes you can get this focus on when you're talking about grief or loss just on the end of life or death, and there's a lot of different aspects of life that we were trying to, tap into to think about, well, how that really affects different people, like retirement, was one thing we were saying. And then additionally, just simple, moving from one apartment to another and changing schools and things. So, but then we also getting into this, like, which taps into a lot of other areas in life, is like this loss of trust or loss of safety or this like control of one's body, where a lot of people have had traumatic incidents that come with that effect when we're talking about child molestation and things like that, that you've just kind of put into that backpack, and then, how what's come of that? What is manifested from putting it in the backpack and maybe not looking at it, or knowing it's in there, or not knowing it's in there anymore because you've suppressed it to the point, or you've rationalized it, or additionally made up its own story, that changed the tune a little bit over time. So, all in all, how are you in the midst of this thought process?
Well, first of all, I think we were talking about topics, I think your analogy of the bag, like, I think it's really accurate and it just piles on, and your boulder, it's so true. I did a training last night for clinicians and it was on mindfulness practice to use with children, but I was sharing with them the reason why these things work is because when you do get into your body more, then you start to release a little bit. So
Yeah,
that
more in tune.
yeah,
Hmm.
the dysregulation that comes from holding trauma in our bodies, um and so it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about. Like we do actually have a lot of things. I didn't get to read it yet, but I got this alert about this kidney stone that was some it was released. It was the size of a grapefruit. And honestly, Daria, I wanna look into that story more about this person and what I'm just wondering what is their background, what is their history?
Right,
Because even kidney
right.
stones, even all of those are if you know
Yeah, the health.
do some research on, like, the idea behind some of these gut manifestations and, like, grief and loss issues, because we do hold a lot in that area. If you notice, a lot of people feel pain and tension in that. I mean,
Definitely.
shoulders, of course, but, I'm just saying and sometimes it's not.
Right. I mean, if we go to H. pylori, if we're talking about just H. pylori in itself in reference to its effects, gut health across the board, and what I see in a lot of people that I've followed up with after somebody's passing, or additionally, or a moment within their life, there is a lot of gut conversation that's been going around with trying to, get things checked out. I don't know why this is feeling like that. And then I've heard a lot of people dealing with H. pylori, which is a stress related, of infection that that people are dealing with, and having to take the medications for that, and even the effects of things like that, you know. But I think there's, just like you're saying, loss, grief. I think we're talking about how that literally can take a toll on your physical self over time, you know? Like, we have the outside things that we can see, you know what I mean? Sometimes people will get drawn or whatever. You get old, you get wrinkled, you know, whatever. But at the same time, there is just a lot of things that people are not recognizing that's going on internally because they're not recognizing that they need to deal, or they just don't want to deal, you know, or they don't know it's something to deal with, because there's so much of, I think, what a lot of us suppress or put to the side is because of either how we were raised, or culturally, or how we feel, or how we were taught to be able to feel, or lack thereof, you know. And so there's just so much of that that can affect, you know, when we were talking about, okay, no, don't go see a psychologist. We don't do that. You know what I mean? There's the things that we in our house. I'm sorry, you got on mute somehow. But yeah, there's the things that we, you know, instill in our children, and things like that. But then also, like, are we picking that up from what our mom said? And is that really true, the way, you know, things go, you know? So, oh, no, I'm sorry, you were getting ready to say.
Oh, no, I put myself on mute when the truck was going by, but, yeah, I think you and I have talked about this previously about,
Hmm.
intergenerational discussions around, um, not just cultural appropriation around grief, but, like, uh if w and again, I'm thinking about children right now, but what we say, they hold, I mean, they do hold, and it goes into long-term memory, and I think even for me, I was processing when someone tells you not to. I just remember this, like, at my dad's funeral, don't, they're trying to soothe you, "Don't cry," so, of course, like, in a way, it was hard for me to cry for a long time. Now I'm a chronic crier, but anyways, I share that
Me
with
too.
you because I think I didn't realize I would cry on my own, like, I wouldn't let anyone see me, and is there a trigger that those words of someone trying to soothe for children, and then we I mean, I'm pretty sure that that had a lot to do with me bottling up some feelings, right?
Oh, definitely. Well, I think it's a lot of things is like, sometimes we're telling our kids what we think is right, or what we have been taught ourselves to
Mhm.
do, you know, and the thing is, we don't recognize that long-term effect, or how it's being processed, you know, either. And then additionally, how literal the brain, those little brains are, or how it's stifling to emotions and feelings. You know, I've been putting into my kids, and they're driving me crazy because, of course, I bought even a big one, right? But we've been talking about the feeling wheel.
What is that? Did you make that?
It's the No, it's the feeling wheel. Oh, sorry, the feeling wheel. And I was like, I am
No,
getting that
wait
big.
a wait a minute, rewind. I'm sorry, we're off track just a minute. There's a feeling wheel that big that you didn't make? Where did you get that bad boy
And
from?
right, of course, it costs a little bit, but not a little. No, but the thing about it, I can't even remember. You know, when in doubt, like, I'm not even going to be the commercial right now, right? But when in doubt, there's places that deliver. Let's just say. But all in all, the feeling wheel, I love it because it's been crazy just recognizing all of your feelings. You know what I mean? And like how honestly one can kind of like segue into another. You know what I mean? But you got to get more in depth in the feeling wheel for sure.
Oh my,
Um,
I'm so glad.
in another podcast.
I can't bel So, it's interesting you brought that up because we were reviewing some slides for a different presentation, and I asked if we could put in the feeling wheelhouse. It's actually a training gonna for high school students, and I'm like, even if I was just saying even children don't know all the words, but we as adults don't use all the words, right? We stay.
Hello.
Yes.
Listen,
I
if I'm
what are the ones we use that you know right away? Pissed, angry,
right,
irritated,
yeah,
tired. But there's so much more to the
And you know what I realized? So I'm going around and I'm thinking the same thing, right? And I realize I don't really say like happy. Like it when I'm happy, I don't ever say like, "Hey, I'm happy," or "Oh, like
so
when I'm saying I'm good, I'm usually like just saying
you're
just
just saying
because.
good, like you're like okay. Right?
Yeah, I guess, right. Or I'm not processing it right now, but I'm gonna put this here. It's
You're good.
sometimes.
Sometimes when you're good is like the good with it. I'm good, and then you're really, and then so there's so. Oh my gosh, Daria! Last night we were doing this. It was just a lot of wordplay. It's like the idea of calm down. When we tell children to calm down, like then a kid's thinking he needs to sit still, and you're trying to teach him to breathe, like how because he's been asked to,
Yes.
but then you're telling his nervous system to calm down. You're trying to help them to breathe. So I think we need to
Right.
spend some time in this culture, like really dissecting what words mean because they're really. I'm more and more realizing how. Did you and I talk about? There's a book called. I think I was at the airport. You know, when you're wandering around the airport, there's some book, and I'd love to. I'll have to see if we can find it, but it talks about. I was just skimming it real quick. The power and influence of words.
Oh, don't get me going. And you know who brought it on? And it's crazy because he's gonna love to hear this. But yeah, so me and John will get into a little bit argument or whatever. He'll say something. I got a definition. He got his definition or what. And so it really is brought forward. You know what I mean? Like the meaning of words. You know what I mean? But it's also made me like intentional in making sure I think before I say too. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, making sure, okay, if I say this word, how is he going to, what is he going to, where is he going to lead it to? How is he going to win this battle? But no, but at the same time, it's still one of those things where I feel like if we understood more of these words in general in reference to how they can affect people, like you're so ignorant. Well, if you don't know what the definition of ignorant is, you know what I'm saying? You're going to possibly take it further than the understanding, the actual definition, right? Because the definition is saying that you've never been taught this, right?
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, it's okay if I've never been taught it. You can't say nothing to me. You know what I mean? And now after this, okay, that's a different story, right? But at the same time, I think when we're coming back to the feeling wheel, when you're talking about calm, right, and you're talking about calming down a kid, and then I look at how calm can be broken down into relief, mellow, trusting, focused, present, comfort. What are you trying to, as the parent, attain when you're talking about calming down? Have you recognized what there should be calming down from, right? Is it they don't trust you because you said you do X, Y, and Z, and now you said you're not?
That's been my second. She totally holds me to my word. She thinks I'm a liar.
That's it. Right. So therefore, you know what I'm saying? When you're talking about trusting that, should she trust that? Okay, well, at least connect. If you're gonna calm her down, at least connect with, okay, I
You
get you're not trusting the fact that I'm,
so
you know what I mean?
powerful, Dari.
Something so I know, I've been using it, girl, because 'cause I'm like, "Let me think."
Battles, like, right? These battles with, like, each other,
Ah,
themselves. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes when we talk about we identify very quickly with being tired and
Mm.
sad, I mean, and like,
Yes, miserable. All the bad side. This is look at it and outside of happy and calm, it's and they have strong, right? But then they have anger, fear, and sad, right? In the middle. Now, this is not the traditional wheel that I use, but if I want it in big, I gotta take what I can get, right? But at the same time, it's I still do like how they've divided these up, right? But at the same time, the majority of the bad boy is negative, right? But
no.
as you go through, you can see how the negative could be looked at in different ways. Like, okay, right now, is she really being bitter or is she just disgusted? And that's why she's given a bitter taste. You know what I mean? Like, what is the deal? So, like, being able to dissect your feelings is part of this bag that we have, right? Because each one of the things that have affected us, that we place something in the bag, we placed it in there based off of what? A feeling that it's caused.
Mhm.
Okay. So you've decided to say, hey, listen, I'm dropping this in there because it affected me. Okay. How much? Hey, you figure out which boulder, rock, or pebble, right? But at the same time, going back and doing the research of why, that feeling of why I might even have thought that was something to put in the backpack in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Why am I holding on to that? What is going on with that? What is it saying about the relationship, the person, the moment, the whatever, that I need to possibly just decipher a little bit more? You know what I mean? And sometimes, like I think I've told you guys about this book called the How to Hold a Cockroach. Right? I know it sounds crazy, but
No, I
How to
don't.
Hold.
Can you tell me about his book? I must not have been on one of that one.
Oh, right. No. Okay. So this book is called, and I'm just looking over onto the side to see if I had it, but of course I don't. I have it at my house, but at the same time. So How to Hold a Cockroach talks about this young boy who grows up and he sees a cockroach and he doesn't understand why he hates it so much, right? He just knows to hate it. But then as he dissects the thought process, he realized that he hates it based off of how his mom hated and acted towards the cockroach, right? And so he really didn't know why he shouldn't have a relationship. Now, let's be clear. We could put this in another animal, right? Like if you didn't hate dogs or something like that, might need to put in that category. But because cockroaches, please don't befriend them, and please don't have them, and please don't have them next to me. But at the same time, the reality of the situation is like, why do I have that feeling of a cockroach, right? Because I've heard how dirty and gross and but now have I actually grown up in a house that had them? No, we had like some little field guys or whatever the case may be. So like really getting an understanding of like, why do I hate them so much? Because I've been told to hate them, or because I've been seeing how somebody else hates them, right? And so he goes through different time periods in this book and figures out why he hates death so much. Why did he hate, I think it was like a sibling being born or something. Like there was like different things that came in. Why, and forefront of things like myths. You know what I mean? In reference to how we're supposed to function, but also, what people tell you. You were talking about when your mom passed, or when your dad passed, and thinking about like what people told you to feel or say in those moments, right? So you have to be strong for others, or you have to, you know, uh,
And you
get
probably
a hold. Some people tell you get a hold of yourself.
thought about this, Daria, and you process as a child differently, and you process as an adult differently, but you still process words that people say as an adult too, right? Like,
Definitely. Oh, for sure.
and that you have to be strong. Oh, the one that I remember is being strong for your children, right? Like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't have yeah, I know. I mean,
Talk
like, what do
about layers of
you
effect right there, right?
this. Like now that we're opening
Mm,
Pandora's box. I mean,
mhm,
they're little comments, but I think sometimes you still carry. I didn't even remember, but now it's came back, right? Because
mhm, mhm.
so it triggered it to see you just memory recall. So I think
Right.
it. You're right. We pack up stuff that others have told us on how to manage our grief. So much of it I feel is because you're so vulnerable to the outside world. Why do they tell you? Why
Tell
did
me about it.
specifics during that cycle? You are so vulnerable. It is so true.
Yes, so vulnerable, and you're supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be functioning this way, and you're some people, function in certain ways during times like this, right? And we talked about it in our education where we talk about STIRBs, right? Those short term, energy releasing behaviors, right? And that we tend to start putting ourselves around and doing. So maybe it's like busy work, or maybe we eat more, or maybe we're angry, we hold our anger, or we isolate ourselves, or things like that. Talked about being a shopaholic before, but even shopping and having that retail therapy, you know, from our grief and the different things that we've been told how to deal with, right? It's kind of pushed us to then also pick up some different things that can be unhealthy, especially if unmanaged, i.e., alcohol and drugs, right? Additionally, maybe even sex or being a workaholic, and how does your family affected by that, right? Additionally, being so holding so much baggage and anger that you're not able to interact with others and you're isolating yourself. Or additionally, how you know we can even short-term energy releasing behaviors are like getting into movies or TV shows and books and just kind of getting lost in it, or lost in your music, right? Because it's just kind of like this trying to get out of your life, you know what I mean, and shift into something else for a moment. And so trying to like distinguish, okay, what have I picked up from that situation? Like, so for me, when I thought it was great coming in, I was like, okay, I love art, right? So I said, let me get my art therapy certification. I end up getting the art therapy certification. And in doing so, I then go into the grief recovery program, right? And get that certification. As I'm going through the recovery certification, I'm realizing I'm disturbing because I'm not doing, my graph the way that everybody else do. I'm designing it. You know what I mean? I've got some art to it, right? So then I realized, okay, part of my ways of somewhat energy releasing, short-term energy release, is crafting, So as I'm going through the program, I said to myself, okay, don't go in the craft room unless you're going to be like cleaning it. Don't try to like get into anything and try to zone yourself out. Cause now I'm like, okay, I got to find an equal balance between the two now. You know what I mean? And so, but that came from, me as a child, dealing with stuff that, as a child, and family and relationships and all the crazy, and trying to understand little and picking up like art and crafts and stuff like that, and just moving forward with it in life. And it's funny because even my career is based a lot off of my ability to bring an artwork forward as well. So I know it's kind of crazy. Oh, you got muted again. Oh, Artie, how you get there?
I'm sorry, that truck with the
No,
sand,
it's okay.
they keep coming back and forth. Um, oh, here they come again. This project, man, it's like
It's still going, right? Oh, I can't
still
stand
gonna
it. I know.
lie, but it's not the fact that when we watch the screen, the sand, it's not gonna even work. Like, really? It's just such
I want you to stop. I want you to stop. But
actually, because you're like, we look at where they're pulling it from, bringing it here. It's not. It's not even gonna.
it's gonna work. I know.
Dara, yes. So stirrups, and I don't know if before I hopped on, you talked about the program, but this grief recovery method. I think it's so powerful because there's a time and place for therapy, of course, and then there's a time and place for an educational kind of um, whatever.
Component to it. Yeah.
Yes, and so I mean, and I've been brainstorming, like how can you, because some people just need grief. I feel like they could have grief recovery. But long story short, you all, it's just the use of this wonderful, they call it the Purple Bible. It's a purple book. It was created
Yeah. Actually, where is it?
about 40, I think 40 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, by John W. James. Yeah, and
Did
John
you
Fields.
did
And
you know
no.
his wife is a soap opera, or she, she comes on The Young and the Restless. Yeah,
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I'm
yes.
sorry. I was trying to get the book out. Let me show you it. Oh,
Oh, nice. Yes, you all, this handbook, which is so amazing. It's just a guiding principle. And then the sessions are just really great about diving in with somebody or a group or individual. And Daria, so like, uh-oh, are you frozen? Can you hear me?
that's I'm frozen. You're frozen.
Oh, I'm frozen. Oh.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I don't know. It could definitely be on me on my end, but yes, the grief recovery handbook is amazing.
Now, if you pick it up on your own and do it's different because of course, we used it in my grief counseling class in
Hmm.
school, but that was a different experience than actually going through the training, and it's different to be in a group with it because it's such an experiential component. So I just got on that tangent because when you were talking about artwork for the timeline, because you're literally doing right your lost graph,
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
doing,
yeah.
but but I think we do get. You were probably saying I'm not doing right. Everybody else's graph is going to look different than mine, and
Yes.
yeah, we really have. I say this a lot lately, but I feel like we've dummied down things in this country. Like, it sounds so horrible.
Mm.
Of course, I love being an American citizen. I love all of
I
it,
think we're so much brash too. I mean, I think we've definitely come away from feelings and like emotion, and it's bad to have.
but out of the box. One of the
Mm.
things that the foundation principles is to be creative, and I
Yeah.
think we're valuing this left side of the brain way too much. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like Daria, the competition in getting into college. I mean, not everybody needs to go to college, honestly. Like,
I know. I know. And that's
they're into doing and they don't.
weight.
It's
Yeah.
weight.
Wait, wait, which in itself, even going to college brings on grief because that change in life and everything there. And some, can handle it, some can't, or some are, it's not the right season. You know what I mean?
Susan, thank you. Because sometimes
Yes.
there are kids who feel bad that they have to come back or like they come back home because they couldn't make it. And it's like,
Right,
it's the
right.
season and it's also not the right time. Like in my own story, I ended up taking a break and I'm like grateful that stories work out. That if you do end up, if you want to finish, you finish.
I know. Oh, definitely. Yeah. If you're not going to finish, I mean, I guess life can catch up with you. You know what I mean? But you're going to finish, even if I've plenty of people, even when I was teaching at one of the colleges here, it
Mhm.
was like, okay, this person's probably late 60s, you know what I mean? And in the class. So I don't think it's ever too late in reference to educating yourself, right? Knowing a little bit more, whether it be to help yourself or additionally others. There's so much information in my brain. I said to myself, why do I even know this, right? But it's been funny how life's rolled out the why, and been able to really open up like some of the wisdom in the wounds, like I was saying, you know what I mean, in reference to
Do you have
how
that quote post? Did
I
you make
know.
it artsy yet?
I love it. I know. Did I what?
I said, did you make it artsy fartsy yet? Like, did you make something like that has it on? Because it's a really powerful word.
I
So
need
see
to
me
do it. I know. I put it on like the my Instagram, but I need to definitely bring it forward.
that for someone who is in. I mean, I listen to those words, but if somebody's in active grieving cycle, like
You
wisdom,
got to be, yeah.
like can you imagine just knowing like I'm getting so it's kind of like um
Hmm.
David Kessler's book Finding Making Meaning out of that, right?
Meaning,
The next stage of
totally.
I just forgot the book, but like
Yeah, yeah.
meaning, and it is about making meaning, wisdom in the wounds. Like
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
couple of wounds that really hurt bad, right?
Oh, tell me about it. And I think even the lives that we've lost, people aren't just a blip in the script, you know what I mean? So it should be something that we take our time to go through the emotional aspects of it and the different, whether it be values or things that they've provided us, to be able to carry them on because sometimes we shut out stuff that was stuff that we should carry forward in our lives because of that relationship that has been incompleted, in your mind, like of course you want to continue on this relationship with your loved one and it's the time is not necessarily always ours, and so basically that those little bits of losses that come prior to the moment and then in the moment you're of a loss at the same time, and you just hope that when I'm helping people, you just hope for that people can see, you know how maybe that relationship did affect them, but also how it was enough that you carried it to knowing that you wanted to do something different, better, or more, you know? And so that different, better, or more, those three words that we talk about in the grief recovery method is so key to, really dissecting the whys in the different relationships. And we're not just talking about relationship with people. Sometimes it's the relationship with money. Sometimes it's the relationship with, you know, your like we were talking about those different stirps, you know what I mean, as well.
Loss of health is a big one too.
Huge. Me, I know. That's a poster. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I do a lot of this based off of like trying to understand and do and get it myself. And I think a lot of people that are in different grief, well, the grief recovery program, they know that there's something that they wanted to make a shift on. You know what I mean? And in their thinking and their understanding, and then also how heavy the backpack is. You know what I mean? Do we want to have this light backpack that we're picking up, or do we want to have the big boulder in there, right? The thing that is affecting us to the point where we're not able to physically move and do what our purpose, I feel, in life should be, right? So I feel like everybody is here for a reason, regardless of the time span or whatever, right? The dash, right? In between the birth and the death date, right? And what you're doing in that time period can be impeded by this backpack and how you can actually attain or even visually see what your purpose is. I mean, and that's the biggest thing that we're not understanding when we're talking about the different, minority communities and how much of the grief gap that there is and how big their backpack is due to the different pebbles that have been put in there, the different stones that have been put in there. Additionally, those boulders, right? And how many boulders do you have? And how do you recognize that that's even a boulder when you live in a community that doesn't see how the effect is on you? You know what I mean? Whether it be mentally, emotionally, mentality wise, understanding, and additionally what you've been empowered and educated to understand as well. So I feel like there's a lot to be um, done in reference to the education of what grief is across the board,
100%.
across the board, and yeah.
I totally agree with you, Daria. Like, I think and like, I know we've done this before, but I can't reiterate like the myths, like the ones that really, and as we know, these stirrups make you feel good for a little. That's why we do engage them, right?
Right, of course, right. That's why, and they're short term. That's why.
They're Band-Aid, and we just keep applying these Band-Aids and just trying to feel better, literally, and then we're like, "Oh, whoa." I still even there's still it's still there's feeling there, right?
Right,
Can't avoid
right.
it, can't run from it as much as we try, and it still follows us.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I feel like even people that run away from, like, I'm going to run away from home. You know what I mean? You got to recognize you're running away from home, right? The physical place, but guess what's still within you,
Mhm.
right? That you're still moving to another space. And it's not that, okay, maybe now the environment around you, but how much you still have within, you know? And yes, over time, hopefully that environment can soften some of the calluses and those hard spots. But at the same time, how much impeding upon your purpose here, right? Because there's this alignment that I always talk about that has to happen with head and heart, right? To actually outstretch. That's my go to.
Thought of you last night too because yesterday I had a slide on about the alignment and the like in the therapeutic process, but it was really about the alignment to help when you're matching your client, but it's matching people actually. But then also it was the idea of like back to this mind body. I did think about you and then yeah.
Right, because I think if you're helping people, if there's not an alignment with your head and heart, right, and then you're then trying to align with theirs and getting to their level, you can't outstretch your arms because, you're trying to figure out how to first. So I think that alignment, I feel like well, it was fun, funny because it was something that came from teaching my daughter about the cross, you know what I mean? And so in reference to our walk in Christianity, it was one of those understandings of like, well, what is this supposed to mean, Mom? Because she kept driving down and we'd go by a cemetery that always had the cross, right? But the crucified Christ was always on it. And she would cry, get so
Oh,
emotional about the whole thing. I
yeah.
mean, to the point where we went to church on Easter. She wouldn't go back for like, I don't know, maybe like 2 months because they watched the movie in class. She
Okay.
was talking about, she was just really had a rough moment with that. So then I was, of course we have to explain them, but then also just understanding like, well, okay, this aspect of the symbol in itself, and my belief and how I feel like if we're talking about applying it in our life, that's kind of how I kind of looked at things. But all in all, I know we're down to the last minute,
Yeah.
or we already oh, wait,
Yes, we're
time.
well, well, as you know, this is a continued topic for Daria and I. We're not done with it just yet.
Sure. Yes, we're definitely going to keep this going. We're going to keep learning over the next, like, probably month, that we might, and things that affect us.
All right, everyone. Thank you, Daria.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.